They say there's a house at the end of Soi 13 where no one stays longer than 7 days. Not because the rent is cheap. Not because the neighbors complain. But because on the 7th day, the house decides who belongs to it. And once it does, you don't leave. You stay. Chapter 1. The house at the end of Soi 13. At the far end of a narrow alley known as Soi 13, just outside the old quarter of Chiang Mai, there stood a 2-story house painted a fading shade of pale yellow. The paint peeled in thin curls near the windows, and dark mildew stains crept up from the base of the walls like something slowly reclaiming what had once been new. During the day, the house looked ordinary, quiet, harmless even. Motorbikes passed by without slowing down. Children kicked a plastic ball in the street, their laughter echoing briefly before dissolving into the afternoon heat. Nothing about the house suggested that it was different from the others lining the alley. But at night, people avoided looking at it. Some swore they had seen a light flickering in the upstairs window long after the previous tenant had moved out. Others said the curtain shifted slightly, as if someone were standing behind it, watching the alley below. The strangest part was not the house itself. It was the pattern. No one had ever stayed there longer than 7 days. Landlords in the area whispered about it but never openly. The property agent, a thin man with restless eyes, always used the same line when showing the place. "It's cheap, very cheap, you can move in immediately." If anyone asked why, he would smile too quickly. "It's just, people don't stay long." He never explained further. The house had been empty for nearly 2 months when I first saw it. The gate creaked when I pushed it open, the metal scraping against concrete with a sound that felt louder than it should have been. The yard was small, cluttered with dry leaves that no one had bothered to sweep away. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the air felt thick, stagnant, as if the house had been holding its breath. Dust floated lazily in narrow shafts of sunlight that slipped through the curtains. The furniture was sparse but intact: a wooden dining table, 2 chairs, a worn-out sofa facing a television that no longer worked. Nothing seemed broken. Nothing seemed violent. And yet, the silence felt wrong. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that waits. I walked slowly toward the staircase at the center of the house. The wood beneath my feet gave a faint groan, not loud enough to call it a creak, but enough to remind me that the house was listening. The staircase led to a narrow hallway on the 2nd floor. 3 doors, all closed. A sudden breeze brushed past me. But the windows were shut. For a brief second, I had the strange sensation that I was not alone, that someone had just moved out of sight as I stepped forward. I turned quickly. No one. Just the hallway. Just the silence. The agent cleared his throat from downstairs. "So," he called up, his voice echoing strangely through the empty space. "What do you think?" I looked at the dim corridor, at the closed doors, at the faint shadow pooling near the top of the stairs. "It's fine," I answered. And for a moment, just a flicker, I thought I saw something shift at the end of the hall. Like someone stepping back into the dark. I told myself it was only the light. Only imagination. After all, it was just a house. And houses don't choose who stays. Do they? Chapter 2. The First Tenant. Before I ever stepped inside the house at the end of Soi 13, there had been others. The first tenant people still spoke about, though never too loudly, was a university student named Niren. He had moved to Chiang Mai from a smaller province, carrying 2 suitcases and the kind of hopeful exhaustion that comes with starting over. He chose the house because it was cheap. That was all. The property agent had given him the same smile, the same careful tone. "You can move in today." Niren didn't ask why the rent was almost half the usual price. Students rarely question luck when it comes in that form. For the first 2 days, everything seemed normal. He unpacked his clothes. He set up a small desk by the upstairs window. He even joked to his friends that the place was bigger than he needed. That first night, he slept deeply, too tired from moving to notice the strange quiet that settled over the house after midnight. On the 3rd night, the silence changed. He later described it as a shift in the air. Not colder, not warmer. Just heavier. Around 2:17 a.m., He woke to the sound of something moving upstairs. But he was already upstairs. He lay still, listening. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. As if someone were walking across the hallway just outside his bedroom door. At first, he assumed it was part of a dream. The mind often plays tricks in unfamiliar places. He turned to check the time on his phone. 2:19 a.m. The footsteps stopped. Then came the sound of wood creaking directly outside his door. Not random creaking. Weight. Pressure. Someone standing there. Niren held his breath. "Hello?" he called softly. No answer. The air felt wrong, thick, like the house itself was leaning closer. He forced himself out of bed and walked toward the door. Each step felt louder than it should have. He reached for the handle and paused. For reasons he couldn't explain, he felt certain that something was on the other side. Not just outside. Waiting. He pulled the door open. The hallway was empty. All 3 doors were closed. The dim night light he had left on at the far end flickered once. Then steadied. He told himself it was nothing. Old wood. Thermal expansion. A stray cat on the roof. He went back to sleep. The 4th night was worse. This time, the footsteps came earlier. And they didn't stop outside his door. They began at one end of the hallway. And walked slowly toward the staircase. Down. Step by step. Niren heard each one clearly. Except, there was no sound of the front door opening. No gate creaking. No motorbike starting. Just silence after the final step. He did not go downstairs to check. The next morning, his friends noticed he looked pale. On the 5th night, he did something different. He locked his bedroom door. He placed a chair against it. He kept the lights on. At exactly 6:59 p.m. the following evening, his phone alarm, one he swore he had never set, rang with a notification that read only. Day 4. He left the house before midnight. No announcement, no dramatic farewell. He packed his things, called the agent, and handed back the key with shaking hands. When asked what happened, he said only this: "There's someone living there." The agent smiled the same thin smile. The house has been empty for months. But when Niren left, he forgot one thing. A notebook. Inside it, on the final page, were 2 lines written repeatedly in hurried ink. "I am not alone." It starts on the 4th night.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 3. The 4th night. The second tenants were a young married couple, Anand and Molly. They had just moved to Chiang Mai for work, eager to begin what they called a quiet life. The house at the end of Soi 13 seemed perfect. Affordable, spacious, private. They laughed when neighbors hesitated to talk about it. Ghost stories, Anand had said lightly. Every old house has one. For the first 3 days, nothing happened. They cleaned the floors, opened all the windows, let sunlight pour into every corner as if light alone could claim ownership. Molly placed fresh jasmine flowers near the staircase because she liked the scent. Anand fixed a loose cabinet hinge in the kitchen. It felt almost normal. Almost. The change began on the 4th night. At exactly 6:59 p.m., the house seemed to exhale. Molly noticed it first. She was in the kitchen when she caught a faint smell drifting through the air. Sweet, smoky, familiar. Burning incense. She frowned. They hadn't lit any. "Anand?" she called. "Did you light something?" "No," he replied from upstairs. The smell grew stronger. Not from one place, but from everywhere. It wrapped around the walls, seeped into the curtains, settled into their clothes. It wasn't fresh incense. It smelled old, like something burned long ago but never fully extinguished. By 8 p.m., the jasmine flowers near the staircase had turned brown. Not wilted. Brown. As if drained. Anand tried to laugh it off. Maybe the neighbors are praying. But the windows were closed. The air outside carried no scent at all. That night, Molly woke to the sound of whispering. Not loud. Not clear. Just a soft murmur near the bedroom door. She nudged her husband. "Do you hear that?" Anand listened. At first, nothing. Then, a voice. Right outside the door. It wasn't speaking loudly enough to understand, but it wasn't random either. The tone was deliberate, slow, almost careful. The handle moved. Once. Twice. They both stared at it. They had locked it. Anand forced himself up and opened the door quickly. The hallway was empty. But the smell of incense was overwhelming now. And the staircase light, one they had turned off earlier, was on. The next morning, they found ash scattered across the steps. Fine, gray, like something had burned there. But there were no burn marks. No candles. No source. On the 5th day, the whispering changed. It wasn't outside the bedroom anymore. It was inside. Soft breathing near the foot of the bed. A presence that did not cast a shadow. At 6:59 p.m. that evening, the television turned on by itself. Static filled the screen. Then, for less than a second, an image appeared. A girl standing on the staircase. Head tilted. Watching. The screen went black. Anand unplugged the TV immediately. They did not stay for the 6th night. At 4 a.m., before sunrise, they packed their belongings in silence. Neither spoke about what they had seen. Neither mentioned the way the ash on the staircase had formed something that almost looked like fingerprints. When they handed back the key, the agent asked gently, "Leaving already?" Molly nodded without meeting his eyes. As they drove away, she looked back once. In the upstairs window, just for a moment, she thought she saw a figure standing behind the curtain. Still. Patient. Waiting. And inside the house, the faint scent of incense lingered. As if marking time. Day 4 had passed. Day 5 had passed. The house was ready to begin again. Chapter 4. The photograph in the closet. I moved into the house on a Tuesday afternoon. The sky above Chiang Mai was pale and heavy with heat. The kind that makes everything feel suspended in slow motion. The agent handed me the key without meeting my eyes for long. "Most people don't stay," he said quietly. Then, after a pause, "But maybe you will." I didn't believe in curses. I believed in patterns. And patterns could be studied. The house felt different when it belonged to me. Or perhaps I only imagined it did. I opened every window. I swept the floors. I wiped the dust from the staircase rail where someone, or something, had once left faint smudges that refused to fade completely. By evening, the house felt almost livable. Almost. The second floor unsettled me the most. 3 bedrooms, one facing the alley, one smaller room at the back, and the last, directly across from the staircase, kept the darkest even with all the curtains drawn back. I chose that one. Not out of bravery, but curiosity. The closet stood against the far wall. Old wood, slightly warped door. It resisted when I first pulled it open, as though the hinges had stiffened from long disuse. Inside were only a few hangers. And something else. A photograph. It had slipped behind the back panel, half hidden between wood and shadow. I only noticed it because the corner caught against my fingers. The image was faded, colors washed into a soft yellow tone from age. A teenage girl stood on the staircase inside this very house. She wore a Thai school uniform, white blouse, dark skirt. Her hair fell straight past her shoulders. Her expression was not overtly sad. But her eyes looked as if they were focused on something just behind the photographer. Or perhaps just behind whoever was holding the photo now. I turned it over. On the back, written in uneven ink, "Do not stay until the 7th day." The handwriting was hurried, pressed hard into the paper, as if written under stress. A warning? Or a memory? I laughed under my breath, though the sound felt unnatural in the room. People scare themselves with coincidences. That night was quiet. Too quiet. No footsteps, no incense. Only the hum of distant motorbikes outside and the occasional bark of a stray dog. I placed the photograph on my desk and lay down. Sleep did not come easily. Sometime after midnight, I heard something subtle. Not a sound. A shift. As if the air pressure in the room had changed. I opened my eyes. The closet door was slightly open. I was certain I had closed it. I sat up slowly. The photograph was no longer on the desk. For a long moment, I did not move. My heartbeat felt loud enough to echo. Then I saw it. The photo was back inside the closet, propped upright against the wall, facing outward, as if it had been placed there deliberately. Watching, I stood, walked toward it, and felt something I had not expected. Not fear. Recognition. The girl in the image looked the same, but something in her eyes had shifted. They no longer seemed to be looking past me. They were looking at me. And beneath the original message on the back of the photo, there was something new. A faint indentation in the paper, as if words were beginning to press through from the other side. The clock on my phone lit up the dark room. 6:59 p.m. was still hours away. And yet, for the first time since moving in, I felt certain of one thing. The house was not waiting for the 7th day. It was counting. And I had just begun day 1.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 5. The Third Night. By the third night, the house no longer felt unfamiliar. It felt aware. The first 2 days had passed with only subtle disturbances, the closet door shifting, the photograph moving when I wasn't looking. I had convinced myself that fatigue and suggestion were powerful forces. If others had lasted until the 4th day, then perhaps whatever haunted this place followed expectation. But the third night broke that logic. It began quietly. Too quietly. The air felt dense, pressing against my skin like unseen humidity. Even the usual sounds from outside, the distant motorbikes, the stray dogs, the murmurs of neighbors, seemed muted, as though the world beyond Soi 13 had stepped back. At 6:59 p.m., my phone vibrated. No notification. No message. Just a vibration. The screen remained dark. I stared at it for a long moment before placing it face down on the desk. I told myself not to check the time again. That was when I heard it. The sound of a chair dragging across the floor downstairs. Slow. Deliberate. Wood against tile. I froze. The house had only 2 chairs. Both were tucked neatly under the dining table when I passed through earlier. The dragging sound continued, steady, unhurried, as though someone was repositioning furniture with patience. I stood and stepped into the hallway. Silence. I walked toward the staircase and looked down into the living room. The dining chairs were exactly where I had left them. Perfectly aligned. Nothing out of place. And yet, the air carried a faint vibration, like something had just finished moving. I descended halfway down the stairs. The overhead light flickered once, then steadied. That's when I noticed it. My shadow stretched along the wall beside me. But it wasn't alone. Behind my shadow, slightly offset, was another. It moved when I moved. But not perfectly. There was a delay. A fraction of a second too slow. I lifted my arm slowly. My shadow followed immediately. The second shadow followed a heartbeat later. My breath shortened. I told myself it was an angle, a trick of overlapping light sources. But there was only one light above me. I stepped down one more stair. The second shadow lengthened. It no longer aligned with mine. It rose higher along the wall, as if it were standing straighter than I was. The temperature dropped abruptly. Not cold enough to see breath, but enough that my skin prickled. Then came the whisper. Not from upstairs. Not from downstairs. From directly behind me. A soft exhale near my ear. I turned sharply. No one. But the second shadow remained on the wall. Still. Unmoving. Watching me. The overhead light flickered again. And for a split second, my shadow vanished. Only the second one remained. Tall. Still. Its head slightly tilted. The light snapped back to normal. Both shadows returned. I stumbled down the remaining stairs, heart pounding violently in my chest. The house felt different now. Not passive. Not waiting. Active. Testing. I grabbed the photograph from upstairs and stared at the girl's face. Her eyes looked darker tonight. And beneath the original warning, the indentation in the paper had deepened. New words were forming. Faint. Pressed from behind the image itself. Day 3. I did not remember writing it. I did not remember anyone else entering. But the house remembered. Upstairs, something shifted. A footstep. Not outside my door. Inside the hallway. And this time, it wasn't walking toward the stairs. It was walking toward my room. Slow. Measured. Counting. Chapter 6. The staircase without a shadow. I did not sleep after the footsteps stopped outside my room. They had paused just beyond the door. No knocking. No attempt to enter. Just presence. The kind that stands patiently because it knows time is on its side. When morning finally came, the house looked unchanged. Sunlight poured through the windows. Dust shimmered harmlessly in the air. The staircase appeared ordinary again, wooden steps worn smooth by years of use. I almost convinced myself the shadow had been exhaustion. Almost. The fourth day passed in uneasy quiet. I avoided looking at the walls for too long. Avoided checking whether my reflection aligned perfectly in mirrors. Avoided thinking about 6:59 p.m. But when the time came, the house made sure I noticed. The overhead light above the staircase turned on by itself. I hadn't touched the switch. The air thickened instantly, like the first inhale before a storm. I stood at the top of the stairs, staring down. My shadow stretched along the wall again. Long, distorted by the angle of the light. I didn't want to look for the second one. But I did. It was there. Closer this time. Not slightly behind. Directly overlapping mine. As if it had learned. I took one step down. My shadow followed. The second shadow remained still. I froze. Slowly, I shifted my weight again. My shadow moved. The other did not. It stayed upright, tall against the wall, head tilted slightly, as though watching me descend. The realization hit with quiet horror. It was no longer attached to me. The staircase creaked under my weight. Halfway down, I glanced at the floor below. There was no shadow there. None at all. Not mine. Not the other one. The light above me flickered once. Sharply. I looked back at the wall. Only one shadow remained now. The tall one. Mine had vanished. A pulse of cold shot through my spine. I lifted my hand cautiously. Nothing moved on the wall. I was casting no shadow. But something else was. The tall silhouette shifted slightly. Its arm lifted, mirroring my movement with a delay. Not following. Leading. The whisper came again. Not behind me this time. From the staircase itself. From the wood beneath my feet. A low murmur vibrating through the steps. 4. The word wasn't loud. It wasn't even fully formed. But I heard it clearly. 4. Day 4. The temperature dropped further. The tall shadow leaned forward slightly. Not falling. Bending. As if trying to step off the wall. I stumbled backward up the stairs, heart slamming violently against my ribs. The light snapped off. Darkness swallowed the staircase entirely. For a full second, there was nothing. No wall. No shadow. No sound. Then, the light returned. Everything looked normal. The wall was bare. My shadow had returned to its rightful place. Perfectly aligned with my body. As if nothing had happened. But something had. I knew it with absolute certainty. The house wasn't just counting days. It was taking something. Piece by piece. First the silence. Then the air. Now my shadow. That night, I checked the photograph again. The girl's eyes were darker than before. And beneath the faint indentation that once read, Day 3, a new word had fully appeared. 4. Written in ink that was not dry.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 7. Day 5. I don't remember falling asleep. I remember sitting on the edge of the bed, the photograph in my hands, the word 4 still damp beneath my fingers. Then, I was standing in the hallway. Not waking up. Already there. The second floor was darker than usual. Even though light spilled faintly from somewhere I couldn't see. The doors were open now. All 3 of them. They had never been open at the same time before. At the far end of the corridor, near the top of the staircase, she stood. The girl from the photograph. White school blouse. Dark skirt. Bare feet against the wooden floor. Her hair covered half her face, but I could see one eye clearly. It wasn't angry. It wasn't sorrowful. It was measuring. She lifted one hand slowly. Not waving. Counting. 1. Her voice did not echo in the air. It echoed inside my head. The hallway stretched slightly longer. The walls seemed farther apart. I tried to move. My body felt submerged in thick water. 2. The overhead light flickered once. Her head tilted further to one side. Unnatural, almost bird-like. My heart pounded violently, but there was no sound in my ears. Even my breathing felt muted. 3. The staircase behind her darkened completely. No railing. No steps. Only a vertical drop into blackness. I forced myself forward. Each step felt delayed, like time was misaligned. She did not move. She only watched. 4. The word vibrated through the walls. The house shifted around me. The wood groaned, not from weight, but from tension, as if something inside the structure was tightening. I reached the middle of the hallway. She was closer now. Closer than the distance I had walked should allow. Her face lifted fully. And I saw it. The faint line around her neck. A bruise. Dark. Unmistakable. 5. The whisper became layered. Not one voice. Many. Counting with her. My stomach dropped. Day 5. I lunged forward. And the hallway snapped into darkness. I woke up on the floor at the top of the staircase. My cheek pressed against cold wood. The overhead light was on. The doors were closed. Everything looked exactly as it had before. Except, my feet were dirty. As if I had been standing somewhere damp. And the air smelled faintly of incense again. 6:59 p.m. glowed on my phone screen beside me. But I was certain it had been morning when I sat down. Time was bending. Or folding. I stood slowly, pulse still racing. The photograph lay a few steps away. I didn't remember dropping it. I picked it up carefully. The girl's expression had changed. She was no longer looking past the camera. She was looking directly outward. Directly at whoever held the image. And beneath the word 4, a new word had appeared. Clear. Fully formed. 5. My reflection flickered in the glass covering the photo. For a split second, it wasn't my face staring back. It was hers. Behind me, from the staircase below, came a soft sound. Not footsteps. Not whispering. A rope tightening. Slowly pulling against wood. Chapter 8. The neighbor across the street. By the morning of day 6, I knew I could not rely on sleep anymore. The dreams were no longer separate from waking life. Time bent inside the house. Hours disappeared, shadows moved independently, and the counting had reached 5. If there was an answer, it would not be inside those walls. It would be outside. Across the narrow alley of Soy 13 lived an elderly woman who had watched the house longer than anyone else. I had seen her before, sitting on a low wooden chair each afternoon. Peeling fruit slowly, eyes sharper than they appeared. When I approached her gate, she was already looking at me. "You're staying there," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. I nodded. "For how many days?" 5. Her hands stopped moving. For the first time, fear crossed her face, not surprise. Not curiosity. Fear. She gestured for me to sit. "The family who built that house," she began, voice low, "had only one daughter. Quiet girl, studied hard, never caused trouble." The air felt heavy again. Even outside. They moved in during the rainy season. Everything was normal. For 6 days. My throat tightened. On the 7th day, she continued, neighbors heard shouting, not angry shouting, desperate. She glanced toward the house. The girl locked herself upstairs. Her parents thought she was studying. That evening, at sunset, the house went silent. A pause. At 6:59 p.m., she added carefully. My stomach turned cold. They found her hanging from the staircase beam. The image flashed vividly in my mind, the hallway stretching, the staircase darkening, The faint line around her neck. They said she had been different. The woman whispered, speaking to empty rooms, counting days, writing in places no one could see. Did she leave a note? I asked. The old woman's gaze sharpened. She wrote one sentence over and over in her notebook. My pulse pounded in my ears. She wrote, "It follows me home." The alley felt narrower. The sunlight weaker. She wasn't the first, the woman added softly. I froze. There were others before her. Other tenants. Always the same pattern. They begin to see shadows. Hear counting. Smell incense. Her eyes locked onto mine. By the 6th day, the house is no longer testing them. Then what is it doing? I asked, though I feared the answer. It is preparing. A chill ran down my spine. For what? For the 7th. The word felt heavier than it should have. I stood slowly. Why doesn't anyone tear it down? I asked. The old woman gave a thin, humorless smile. They tried once. I waited. The workers refused to return on the 2nd day. Silence stretched between us. As I turned back toward the house, she called out one final thing. If you hear it counting backward, do not answer. The walk back felt longer than before. The house stood still at the end of the alley. Windows closed. Curtains unmoving. It looked harmless. Empty. But as I stepped through the gate, the air shifted again. Inside, the overhead staircase light was already on. I hadn't left it that way. And from somewhere above, softly, patiently, 6. The counting had resumed.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 9. Day 6, 6:59 p.m. The house did not wait for nightfall anymore. By early afternoon of day 6, the air inside had grown unnaturally still. Even the dust seemed suspended, unmoving, as though gravity itself had thinned. I kept all the windows open. It didn't matter. The smell of incense returned, faint at first, then slowly thickening into something suffocating. Not fresh incense, not ceremonial. Old. Like something burned long ago that refused to disappear. The staircase light remained on all day. I never touched the switch. By 6:40 p.m., my phone began to lose signal. No calls would go through. No messages would send. At 6:52 p.m., the power flickered once. At 6:55 p.m., every door on the 2nd floor creaked open simultaneously. Not slammed. Not forced. Opened. Inviting. The house was no longer hiding. It was arranging. I stood at the top of the staircase again. My shadow lay against the wall beside me. Still mine. For now. 6:58 p.m. The temperature dropped sharply. The smell of incense intensified until my lungs burned with each breath. The hallway behind me seemed longer than before. The walls stretched subtly outward, like something expanding from within. 6:59 p.m. Every sound stopped. No insects. No distant traffic. No wind. The digital clock on my phone froze at 6:59. Then, a single creak echoed from above. Impossible. There was nothing above the 2nd floor. But the sound came again. Wood under weight. Slow. Deliberate. Footsteps. Walking across the ceiling. Dust drifted downward in thin streams. The light above the staircase flickered violently. My shadow split. Not into 2. Into 3. One remained attached to me. One stood slightly behind. The 3rd hung from the ceiling. Arms slack. Head tilted sideways. The shape was unmistakable. A body suspended. My heart slammed painfully against my ribs. The hanging shadow swayed gently, though there was no rope visible. Only the outline. The whisper returned. Not counting upward. Counting backward. 6. The voice came from above. 5. The shadow on the ceiling twisted slowly. 4. The staircase groaned under invisible tension. The house was no longer testing. It was aligning. I tried to step back, but my feet felt rooted to the floor. 3. The hanging shadow lowered slightly, as if descending. 2. The smell of incense thickened into smoke. I could barely breathe. 1. Silence. The shadow dropped. The light shattered into darkness. For a single second, I felt something brush past my shoulder, cold, weightless, deliberate. Then, everything returned. The staircase light steadied. The air cleared. The ceiling was empty. Only one shadow remained beside me. Perfectly aligned. As if nothing had happened. My phone screen flickered. The time changed. 7 p.m. Day 6 had ended. Behind me, from the hallway, came a new sound. Not footsteps. Not whispering. A rope tightening slowly against wood. Preparing. Chapter 10. The 7th day begins. I did not sleep on the night between day 6 and day 7. The house no longer needed darkness to move. It moved in silence. It moved in time. At 12:01 a.m., my phone reset itself. The calendar notification appeared without sound. Day 7. No sender. No application. Just the message. The air felt thinner, sharper, like breathing inside a sealed room. The smell of incense had faded, but something heavier replaced it. Dust. Old wood. And something metallic beneath it. I stood in the hallway outside my room. All 3 doors were open again. The staircase light was on. But the house felt different. Not restless. Focused. By morning, I noticed small changes. The photograph on my desk no longer showed the girl alone. There were 2 figures now. Her. And someone standing slightly behind her. The second figure was blurred. Indistinct, but the outline matched my height. I felt a tightening in my chest. The indentation beneath the word 6 had deepened. A new word was fully visible. Stay. I hadn't written it. I hadn't touched the back of the photograph since yesterday. By afternoon, reflections began to misalign. In the bathroom mirror, my movements lagged by half a second. When I blinked, the reflection blinked slower. When I turned my head, it turned after me, as if memorizing. At 6:30 p.m., the house grew unnaturally quiet. No distant traffic. No wind through the alley. Even the old woman across the street was not sitting outside her home. The world beyond Soy 13 had withdrawn. 6:50 p.m. The staircase light flickered once. 6:55 p.m. The wooden beam above the staircase groaned. Slow. Under pressure. 6:58 p.m. The temperature plummeted. I could see my breath now. 6:59 p.m. Every door in the house slammed shut at once. The sound reverberated violently through the walls. The staircase light went out. But I could still see. A faint, gray illumination filled the space. And there, above the staircase, hung a rope. Not a shadow. Not an outline. A real rope. Swinging gently. The air tightened around my throat. I tried to step backward. The floor beneath me felt unstable. Soft. As if the wood were no longer solid. The whisper came again. Not counting upward. Not counting backward. Calling. Samchai. My name. Spoken clearly. From the staircase. I forced myself to look up. The girl stood at the top step. No longer distant. No longer blurred. Her face was fully visible. Calm. Too calm. You stayed, she said softly. Her voice did not echo. It pressed. You made it to 7. The rope swayed behind her. You don't have to leave. The floor beneath my feet shifted again. My shadow stretched upward unnaturally. Not cast by light. Pulled. Drawn toward the beam. You only have to stay. The rope tightened slightly. The beam creaked under invisible weight. I felt something cold brush against my neck. Not hands. Not rope. Intention. The photograph slid off my desk upstairs. I heard it land. The whisper returned one final time. Not from her. From the house itself. It follows you home. The rope stopped swinging. And I realized something horrifying. It had never been waiting for the 7th day to take someone. It had been waiting for someone who wouldn't run. And I had stayed.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 11. The photograph changes. The rope did not touch my skin. Not physically. But the pressure around my throat tightened anyway. I couldn't breathe properly. Not because something blocked my airway, but because the air itself felt owned by the house. The girl stood unmoving at the top of the staircase. Calm, patient. You stayed, she repeated. Her voice was no longer whispering. It was steady, almost gentle. The staircase beneath my feet groaned again, but this time it felt distant, as though I were hearing it through water. I tried to move. My body responded slowly. Delayed. Like my reflection in the mirror earlier. The rope above swayed once more. And then, everything snapped back to normal. The light above the staircase turned on. The rope was gone. The girl was gone. The air returned to ordinary stillness. My lungs filled again. 6:59 p.m. still glowed on my frozen phone screen. But the silence was different now. Not threatening. Settled. I stumbled back into my room. The photograph lay on the floor exactly where I had heard it fall. I bent down slowly and picked it up. The image had changed again. The girl no longer stood alone at the staircase. There were 3 figures now. Her. A blurred outline behind her. And a third figure, clearer than before. Me. Standing slightly behind her left shoulder. My face pale. Eyes unfocused. Mouth slightly open as if mid-breath. But I didn't remember standing there. I turned the photograph over. The back was no longer blank except for the warnings. The indentation was gone. The ink was bold. Permanent. Day 7. Accepted. My hands trembled. I looked up sharply. The closet door was open again. Inside, there were more photographs. Dozens. Stacked neatly. Each one showed the staircase. Each one showed the girl. And behind her, a different face. Some blurred. Some clear. Some barely visible. All positioned the same way. All slightly behind her. I flipped through them quickly. Different clothes. Different ages. Different expressions. But always the same arrangement. And on the back of each photo, a name. And the words. Stayed. My heart pounded violently. I searched frantically for an exit in the house. The front door. The back door. The windows. They all opened easily. Nothing was locked. Nothing was blocked. But something felt wrong. The alley outside looked dimmer. Muted. The old woman's house across the street seemed slightly faded. As if I were seeing it through glass. I stepped outside. The air felt thin. Weightless. A motorbike passed through the alley. Through me. No impact. No resistance. The rider didn't react. I looked down at my hands. They looked solid. But the light passed through the edges faintly. I turned back toward the house. In the upstairs window, I saw myself standing there. Watching. Behind the girl. Still. Patient. My throat tightened again. Not from pressure this time. From understanding. The house had not killed me. It had kept me. Day 7 was never about death. It was about placement. Becoming part of the arrangement. The counting was not a warning. It was preparation. Inside the house, the staircase light flickered once. Inviting. And from within, softly, gently, the counting began again. 1. The alley grew quieter. And I realized something far worse than being trapped. The house was no longer where I lived. It was where I waited. Chapter 12. The names in red. Waiting feels different when you no longer breathe. Time no longer moves forward. It circles. I do not remember walking back inside the house. Yet I was there again, standing at the top of the staircase. Just slightly behind her. The girl. She no longer looked fragile. She looked anchored. Bound to the beam above us not by rope, but by something deeper. Agreement. The house was clearer now. Not brighter. But sharper. I could see faint markings along the walls that I hadn't noticed before. Thin red lines, trailing downward from the ceiling beam. At first, I thought they were cracks in the paint. Then the lines shifted. Slowly. As if wet. I stepped closer. They were not cracks. They were names. Written over each other in layers of dark red script. Some faded. Some fresh. Each name pressed directly into the wood. Not painted. Carved. And filled. The newest name was still forming. The letters etched themselves slowly into the wall beside the staircase. S-O-M-C-H-A-I. The wood split slightly as the final letter completed. There was no pain. Only certainty. The girl spoke without turning her head. You see it now. Her voice echoed softly through the structure of the house itself. It does not choose randomly. I understood before she finished. The house did not hunt. It waited. It amplified. It whispered. But it required something essential. Someone who stayed. Fear drove most people away before the 7th day. Those who left broke the pattern. Those who stayed completed it. I looked at the rows of carved names. Some were scratched shallowly, tenants who had almost stayed. Others were carved deep, those fully taken. And beneath each name, a faint mark. A tally. 7 small lines. The counting was not for them. It was for the house. The staircase beam groaned gently above us. The sound no longer frightened me. It sounded like breathing. The girl finally turned slightly toward me. Her eyes were no longer sorrowful. They were resigned. I was the first to finish it, she said quietly. Finish. Not die. I counted because it was counting me. The realization sank heavily into what remained of my awareness. The house had been incomplete before her. It had needed an anchor. The 7th day was not an ending. It was a binding. Each new name strengthened the structure. Each stayed soul reinforced the beam. Made the presence heavier. More permanent. From below, I heard the faint metallic click of the front gate opening. The alley outside had color again. Sound again. Life again. A new voice drifted in from the doorway. Curious. Young. Hello? Is anyone here? The girl's gaze shifted toward the entrance. The staircase light flickered gently. The carved names glistened faintly. The counting restarted. Soft. Patient. 1. I felt the pull immediately. Not upward. Forward. Toward the top of the stairs. Into position. The house was not haunted. It was constructed. Layer by layer. Name by name. And I understood something far more terrifying than death. The cycle would never end. Because someone would always need a cheap house. And someone would always stay. The whisper deepened through the walls. 2.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 13. The New Tenant. The gate creaked open. The sound carried through the house like a signal. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just enough. The boy who stepped inside looked no older than 20. A backpack slung over one shoulder. A rolled mattress under his arm. Tired eyes. Hopeful posture. He paused at the doorway. Hello? He called again. The house did not answer with sound. It answered with stillness. I watched from the top of the staircase. Or rather, I existed there. Positioned slightly behind her left shoulder. Exactly as the others had been before me. I could not step forward. I could not step back. But I could see. The girl's head tilted slightly. He will stay, she murmured. Not hopeful. Not cruel. Certain. The boy stepped fully inside. The air shifted subtly around him. He didn't notice. They never did. He placed his bag down and walked through the living room, examining the walls. His fingers brushed along the staircase railing. For a brief second, he shivered. Recognition. A small instinct. He almost turned back toward the door. But he didn't. The house exhaled quietly. The staircase light flickered once. 3. The whisper echoed softly through the beam. The counting had never stopped. It had only restarted. The boy climbed halfway up the stairs and paused. His shadow stretched long across the wall. And for a brief second, it split. He blinked. It returned to normal. He laughed softly to himself. Just tired. I remembered saying something similar. The girl stepped down one stair. Not physically. Not fully. But her presence lowered slightly. Closer to him. I felt the pull as well. The invisible alignment that positioned us correctly in the frame. The photograph upstairs slid off the desk on its own. The boy flinched at the sound. He looked toward the hallway. Curiosity won over caution. It always does on the first day. He walked into the room I once slept in. Picked up the photograph from the floor. His brow furrowed as he examined it. The image still showed the staircase. The girl. And me. But the outline behind me had grown faint. My details softening. Fading. Making room. He turned the photograph over. The back was blank. For now. Behind him, the closet door creaked open slowly. The stack of older photographs shifted slightly. Waiting. The boy did not see us standing at the top of the stairs. He did not hear the beam settle above. He did not notice that the alley outside had grown quieter again. But he would. By the third night. By the fourth. By 6:59 p.m. The girl's voice drifted softly beside me. You understand now? Yes. I did. The house did not need to chase. It only needed time. And someone willing to stay. The boy placed the photograph on the desk and exhaled slowly. It's not that bad, he whispered to himself. The staircase light glowed steadily. The carved names along the wall darkened faintly. Preparing. The whisper returned. 4. The cycle had already begun. And from where I stood, watching, waiting, I realized the most terrible truth of all. Leaving had once been possible. But now, I was part of the reason they stayed. Chapter 14. Full attendance. The fourth day arrived faster for him than it had for me. Time behaves differently inside the house. It compresses. Accelerates. Repeats. The boy, his name was Arun. I heard it when he answered a phone call on his second evening, had begun to notice the changes. He no longer laughed at the flickering light. He no longer dismissed the smell of incense. On the third night, he locked his bedroom door. On the fourth, he stopped sleeping. I watched him pace the hallway below. His shadow split briefly at the turn of the staircase. He froze when he saw it. Good, I thought. Leave. Please leave. Something inside me still resisted the alignment. Still remembered breath. Still remembered choice. The girl beside me remained calm. He is still deciding, she whispered. That frightened me more than anything. The house did not force. It nudged. It amplified fear until fear rooted someone in place. 6:59 p.m. approached. Arun stood at the front door, hand on the knob. The alley outside looked normal. Alive. Real. He hesitated. The staircase beam groaned softly above. The carved names along the wall darkened slightly. I felt a tightening around my own awareness. The pull toward position. Toward completion. Go, I tried to say. But my voice did not travel downward. It dissolved into the walls. Arun opened the door halfway. A breeze slipped in. For a split second, the house loosened. The beam quieted. The counting paused. He could still leave. Then, his phone vibrated. He glanced down. The screen displayed a notification. Day 4. No sender. No app. Just the message. His hand trembled. He stepped backward instinctively. And the door closed. Not slammed. Not forced. Closed. The beam above settled heavily. The staircase light flickered once. 5. The whisper echoed gently. I felt it then. The alignment correcting itself. Like a structure snapping back into place. The girl turned slightly toward me. You remember this part? Yes. I did. The doubt. The hesitation. The small moment where escape was possible. And the quiet decision to stay just one more night. Arun backed toward the staircase. He looked up. For a fraction of a second. Our eyes met. I don't know how. He shouldn't have been able to see me. But he did. Not clearly. Not fully. Just a flicker. Recognition without understanding. "Is someone there?" he whispered. The house responded by dimming the hallway lights. The shadows lengthened. His own shadow split again. This time, it did not merge back immediately. He stumbled backward up the first step. The beam above creaked louder now. Preparing. The names along the wall shimmered faintly. And for the first time since day 7, I felt something else. Guilt. Because I understood what the house needed. Not death. Not rope. Completion. Full attendance. The staircase must always be filled. Every position occupied. Every name carved. And if one of us tried to resist, the structure weakened. The air trembled slightly. The beam groaned in warning. The girl's voice lowered. "If he leaves, one of us must replace him." The realization struck with cold clarity. There were only 2 places visible in the photograph now. Her. And me. If he left, the house would rebalance. And I would move forward. To the beam. The whisper deepened. 6. Arun turned and ran upstairs. Not toward the door. Toward the hallway. Toward 6:59 p.m. And I understood. I could not save him. Because the house no longer needed just a tenant. It needed all of us.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 15. 6:59 p.m. Arun reached the top of the staircase just as the air changed. You can always feel it before you see it. The stillness. The tightening. The sense that the house is holding its breath. 6:58 p.m. He stood in the hallway, chest rising rapidly, eyes wide and unfocused. His bedroom door hung open behind him. The photograph lay on the floor where he had dropped it. I stood in my position. Behind her. As always. The girl did not move. She did not need to. The beam above us groaned under invisible strain. 6:59 p.m. Every sound in the house stopped. No flicker. No whisper. No wind. Just silence. The staircase light went out. But we could still see. A gray illumination filled the space again, neither light nor shadow. Arun turned slowly. He saw the rope first. This time it was not faint. Not forming. Not implied. It hung solid from the beam. Still. Waiting. He shook his head violently. "No," he whispered. His shadow on the wall split instantly into 2. One remained attached to him. The other stood upright, taller. Calmer. The second shadow stepped forward. Arun did not move. He couldn't. The air thickened around him. Not choking. Anchoring. The whisper returned. Not from the girl. Not from me. From the beam itself. 7. The rope swayed once. Aaron's second shadow lifted slightly from the floor. Detached. It rose slowly toward the beam. His body remained standing. Breathing. Alive. But lighter. His eyes unfocused. His shoulders dropped. The second shadow reached the rope first. And then. It aligned. Perfectly. His physical body collapsed onto the hallway floor. Unconscious. Not dead. Just empty. The rope vanished. The staircase light snapped back on. Time resumed. 7 p.m. Arun lay on the wood, breathing faintly. Alive. But something essential was missing. The girl stepped slightly to the side. And I felt it. The shift. The correction. My position changed. Not dramatically. Just slightly backward. The space beside her filled. Arun now stood there. Not the boy who had walked in. The version that had separated from him. Calm. Still. Eyes hollow but aware. Downstairs, the front door creaked open by itself. Aaron's physical body stirred faintly on the floor. He would wake. He would leave. He would tell people he fainted. He would swear he would never return. And he would mean it. But something of him would remain. Here. The carved names on the wall darkened. A new line etched itself beneath mine. A-R-U-N. 7 tally marks appeared beneath it. Full attendance. The beam above settled comfortably. The house exhaled. Complete again. The girl looked forward. Not at him. Not at me. Through the hallway. Through time. Waiting. Outside, the alley regained sound. Motorbikes. Voices. Life. Within days, a new advertisement would appear online. Cheap rent. Immediate move in. No questions asked. And someone would answer it. Because there is always someone who needs a place to stay. And there is always someone who thinks they can last more than 7 days. The staircase light flickered softly. And the whisper began again. 1. The house is still there. The staircase still stands. The beam still waits. And somewhere, right now, someone is unpacking their bags. Telling themselves they won't believe the stories. But when 6:59 p.m. arrives on the 7th day, belief won't matter anymore. Because the house doesn't need you to believe. It only needs you to stay.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.